Happy Friday, everyone. Hope one out there has a great weekend ahead. We got a lot to talk about in this update, and yet another storm signal that looks to produce multiple rounds of severe weather heading into next week. So, we're going to break down the details for you to keep you well ahead of the storm. Take a look at the overall North American view this afternoon. And what's going to happen is we've got a pretty significant trough that's really going to be building up there into the Pacific Northwest and into British Columbia there. That's going to bring some cooler anomalies, if not almost chilly weather for those areas into Oregon, back into Washington, as well as into Idaho, into Montana, feeding into the Dakotas. But at the same time, we've got a southwest wind that's going to bring very warm temperatures. In fact, the warmest temperature so far you've seen this spring will be surging northbound with those warmer temperatures. And as it does, we're going to actually watch this little system here with a colder pocket aloft tapping into that much more significant trough that will be diving in, setting the stage for likely multiple rounds beginning on Sunday and likely intensify into the plains, especially as we head into the upper Midwest, getting into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. But even last night, we talked about the storm signal yesterday as this mesoscale convective system that was originating just west of the Wichita Falls region did in fact come to fruition and really started to amplify as it dove east southeastward through Texas, bringing a lot of high winds. And then it really ramped up as it was approaching the Houston Metroplex. Some of those areas picked up 80 to, if not 100 mile per hour winds, likely in some bedded in tornadoes within that region. And then that continued to move off into the overnight hours. In fact, New Orleans even picked up an 82 mile per hour wind gust. Even portions of Florida actually had a 71 mile per hour wind gust this morning. So that was a very dynamic system. And even that system is actually still not done. We've got the leftover effects even still having impacts today as we have this leftover energy that could actually produce more storms right along the coastal regions back into Victoria, into Houston, back into Galveston, but really picking up again back into areas of Louisiana and the Mississippi, as well as into Alabama and Georgia and the Florida Panhandle. We also have another pocket of energy that's building up there in Canada. That's going to bring some higher winds down to the Dakotas, but you can see much of the Pacific Northwest and really much of the West is actually experiencing some really nice weather, just to enjoy the nice weather, because there's not really much happening out there besides the kind of the cooler anomalies and the feels like wonderful temperatures really. But it's not that way across the central and eastern two-thirds because we've got a lot of high wind gusts to be dealing with. First, that complex that's associated with it up in Canada over the next 48 hours, that's still going to produce some very high winds across areas of Montana, back into Wyoming, as well as in the Dakotas. Some of these upwards to 50, 60, if not almost 70 miles an hour. But you can see where the main system is, right? That little mesoscale convective system, it just won't let up. And those are ribs, folks. Whenever you see that, and we actually saw that yesterday, that's when they have those Boeing features kind of band out ahead of it. That's going to produce those very high wind gusts. In fact, at one point yesterday, that movement was upwards to 70 miles an hour, folks. That is dangerous stuff. And that's the kind of stuff that's still along the I-10 corridor there into Louisiana, back into Mobile, as well as into the Florida Panhandle, southern portions of Alabama, getting into Georgia, into the Carolinas. Definitely be on high alert over the next 24 to 36 hours with significant winds really along or right around that corridor that could do a lot of straight line wind damage, some downburst winds, and some microburst even within those cells. So you can look at the radar depiction, over the next 48 hours. Notice the noticeable dry slot, right? For a good part of the country, not really experiencing any much rain for the next 48 hours. Really, two areas of concern. The one pocket of energy that's highlighted over Canada that's bringing the instability a little bit further south into the Dakotas. But yes, the main piece of energy is right along that mesoscale convective system that's going to bring multiple inches of rain, if not flooding rains, down there into Louisiana. Again, unfortunately, they've just been inundated. And then as this actually swings up the East Coast, you're still going to get your fair amount of precipitation up here into the Ohio Valley, as well as into the Carolinas, getting into Virginia, back into West Virginia, and feeding into Pennsylvania here, over the next 36 to 48 hours. But after that, we'll be watching that rapid warm up like we talked about. So here's the overall setup. You'll have the cooler anomalies that's kind of draped across the eastern seaboard with that low pressure center just kind of sitting off the coast here, producing some light showers and moderate thunderstorms for the next couple of days, even at starting on Sunday. But the main warm up is going to be in the middle of the country, where much of the southern plains, much of the central plains, much of the Ohio Valley rapidly warms up all the way to Canada, while we have that significant trough that's going to be building into the Pacific Northwest and much of British Columbia. That cooler anomalies is actually going to intensify and actually get colder as we get deeper into Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, with a little nice cool front coming in. But that's the problem, folks. It's going to clash into those warmer temperatures, and especially as that colder air aloft that comes off the California coast kind of mixes in that action, that's when it's going to spell trouble and set the beginning stages for the first round of severe storms. Because this here is the overall 500 millibar on the wind aspect of it, with the upper level lows that will be coming in. We've got a little shortwave underneath it, but this is the main potent system that will be trailing behind it. So I do feel there is going to be some severe storms that's highlighted over the plains on Sunday, with dry line action getting going into the heat of the afternoon. And that's exactly what kind of shows up on the overall dew point depiction. You can see the sharp edge, right? The sharp edge in your dew points, pretty sharp gradient right there, as you got all the drier air, right? The cooler anomalies with that cool front, all draped across the West Coast mainly, but it's right there across the western portions of Texas into Kansas, back into Oklahoma. I think that's when it's going to get amplified as we bubble up the atmosphere, as that little bit of a cooler air aloft gets trapped and then up in the upper levels. That's going to help overturn the atmosphere and produce those severe storms. And that'll be on Sunday. So you got a lot of low shear. Your shear is around 40 to upwards 45 knots, even on Sunday. So right along this dry line, likely in portions of Nebraska, back into Kansas, as well as into Oklahoma, we should be looking at two strong and severe storms, and likely some tornadoes, unfortunately, will be coming back in the picture, as we have another yet significant area of low pressure that's going to be forming right kind of in the similar areas that we've been seeing them right there, and then should set the stage for supercell development into eastern portions of Nebraska, getting into central and eastern 2/3 of areas into Kansas, and then feeding down there into western Oklahoma, with the main activity really going to be highlighted over Kansas and Nebraska. But I think what things get really amplified as we head into Monday, we've got a little bit more, water vapor coming in from that southwest wind from the Gulf of Mexico, a little bit more moisture to contend with. So instead of the short wave, you'll have that little bit more in trough ejection that will be intersecting and kind of commingling with that short wave underneath. And then with that colder pocket aloft, all those dynamics start to come together. And that's just to set the stage for a little bit more significant event as we head into Monday, especially for those areas across Kansas, back into Missouri. But I think even then it lifts even further north into Iowa and those areas. So back into, this is what the Storm Prediction Center has right now. This is day 4 out, right? So day 4, it still has a slight risk for severe storms that will obviously likely expand as this gets a little bit closer. But for right now, kind of the main areas right there in Kansas, into Nebraska, as well as in northwestern portions of Missouri, getting into Iowa. But you better believe this is likely going to have upscale growth, and this would push further northbound as future updates will be coming to fruition. But I don't think Monday is going to be your main event. I think it's actually going to be Tuesday, because then we'll have a lot more dynamics to work with. Here's the overall Tuesday setup with record high temperatures. So you got the southwest winds feeding in those warmest temperatures of the season, well into the triple digits down there in South Texas, feeding back into the 90s, even surging into Oklahoma as well as into Kansas. Even the middle 80s reach up into the Ohio Valley, back into Indiana, as well as into Ohio. Even upper 70s in Wisconsin, folks. You know that's not normal for this time of year. But it's everything but nice up there in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, sign me up. A widespread 70s, widespread 60s for high temperatures in Idaho and Montana and Wyoming. I mean, kind of jealous. I would like to be there, but yeah, and just enjoy the nice conditions because it's going to be some really nice weather to come. But unfortunately, because of that nice weather, is going to clash with that very warm temperatures, and the upper level winds are going to be splitting in the atmosphere. That's going to produce severe storms highlighted across the plains. And with that upscale growth, it's going to push into the Ohio Valley, tapping into those higher dew point anomalies, surging in from the Gulf of Mexico with those 70s surging through Texas into Oklahoma, but 60s this time reaching all the way to Missouri, Iowa, even Wisconsin. You're talking upper 60s for this time of year. You know that's some serious stuff. When you got a warm front lifting that far north, you've got a developing, deepening low pressure off to your west, and you've got a significant trough that will be coming in with shear. That is going to spell trouble for severe storms, if not tornadic storms, heading into Tuesday. So you got the developing low pressure, 996 millibar low pressure highlighted over Iowa. Upscale growth feeds into Wisconsin, and this would likely push into the heat of the afternoon, into the evening time frame, with likely tornadoes across this sector. And then further south, which will try to back build further south, still have some instability, but less action as you build further south into Oklahoma and back into, areas further south as well. But he's got instability. You got all that ingredients plus the instability as those Cape values over 2,000 reach all the way to Wisconsin, folks. So it's got a lot of dynamics really starting to come together, and especially this low level shears. Now we're talking upwards to 50 knots. That's plenty to produce strong tornadoes, folks. So that is the concern as we head into Tuesday. And look at the water vapor has got to feed into as well. Yeah, the darker the colors, the more intense the water vapor, especially when you start seeing those darker reds and even the purples. That is some intense stuff highlighted across Illinois as we head into your Tuesday afternoon. This is what the Storm Prediction Center has right now. This is day 5, right? This is day 5. Pretty rare they issued this big of a risk for day 5, spreading from that southern corridor from Oklahoma City to Little Rock to Tulsa to Springfield to Wichita to Kansas City, Springfield back into St. Louis, as well as into Milwaukee, Des Moines, back into Chicago as well, feeding all the way into Green Bay, folks. Yeah, and look what the learning model has. And actually, the learning model has done very well so far this spring. Definitely concerning that it's really ramps it up across Missouri as well as into Illinois. All the water vapor, right? That's got some pretty intense stuff that could likely feed into northwestern portions of Illinois, get to Iowa, as well as into Wisconsin, back into even areas of Michigan. Going to be having a lookout for all 3 modes. And yes, tornadoes would be a huge concern, if not strong tornadoes, during the day on Tuesday. And then what we will watch it on Wednesday is that little cool front try to continue to dive southeast. And of course, it's going to lose its steam the further south it goes because it's May. They don't really go that far this south this time of year, but it is going to try to pull that cooler anomalies, at least holding off those record high temperatures to surge even further north than they already are. That's going to compress the overall temperature gradient further south. And that's going to set the stage for more severe storms likely across the Ohio Valley. But this time, it's going to be shifting towards more Illinois and Indiana, as well as into Ohio, feeding into Kentucky and getting into Tennessee by that point. And it could even reach as far eastward as West Virginia and back into Pennsylvania by then. And of course, by Thursday, that cold front even loses more of its luster, stops the push further south, and it kind of elongates and stretches out to what's left. Could be actually some severe storms that could be even highlighted across the Northeast on Thursday. But we got a long ways out. It's only Friday, but you can see it's going to be pretty busy again, unfortunately, as the second half of May continues to look amplified and busy, but it looks to be pushing further north this time for next week. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you like the video. Definitely hit the subscribe button and catch me next update. Why I protect you before and after storm.